I stood in what used to be my beautiful kitchen, staring at the disaster zone my brother James had created. Cabinets torn out, walls partially demolished, and expensive marble countertops cracked, all in the name of helping me renovate. 6 months of this help had turned my $750,000 dream home into a nightmare. "You're doing it all wrong again," James called out from behind me, his voice dripping with that familiar condescension. "This is why you need me here. You're too stupid to manage a property like this." I closed my eyes, remembering the day I'd proudly shown him the house. I'd saved for years, worked overtime, lived frugally, all to afford this gorgeous Victorian property in a historic neighborhood. Instead of congratulations, I got a lecture. "You got ripped off," he'd said, walking through the rooms with a supposedly expert eye. "This place needs at least $200,000 in renovations. Good thing your big brother's a contractor." Except James wasn't really a contractor. He'd worked on a few construction sites, watched a lot of home renovation shows, and somehow convinced himself he was an expert. But I didn't know that 6 months ago. I just knew he was my older brother, and when he offered to help, I trusted him. That was my first mistake. "I'm thinking we should take out this load-bearing wall next," James announced, pointing at the one thing keeping the second floor from collapsing. "Open concept is in right now." "No," I said firmly, "no more demolition." He laughed, that irritating chuckle that made me feel like I was 10 years old again. "This is why you need me, little brother. You don't understand modern design. Trust me, I know what I'm doing." But I finally learned not to trust him. This morning, I discovered something that changed everything. While looking for my property insurance documents, I found papers James had hidden in my home office, papers that revealed his true intentions. He'd been documenting everything. Every change, every renovation, every dollar spent. But not to help me. No, he'd been building a case to claim partial ownership of my house. His plan was to argue that he'd invested significant time and money into the property, making him a de facto co-owner. The papers included conversations with a lawyer about adverse possession laws, squatters' rights, and ways to legally force me to sell. He'd even drafted a lawsuit claiming I verbally agreed to make him a partner in exchange for his renovation work. "We should start on the bathroom next week," James was saying, oblivious to my silence. "I've got some ideas that'll only cost you about $40,000. I looked at him, really looked at him. My older brother, who bullied and belittled me our entire lives, who'd moved into my house under the guise of helping, who was systematically destroying my property while plotting to steal it. "No," I said quietly. "We're done." He turned, surprised by my tone. "What do you mean done?" "I found the papers, James, the lawsuit you're planning, the documentation, everything." His face changed, that familiar smirk replaced by something harder. "You were snooping through my things?" "In my office, in my house." I stood straighter. "The house you're trying to steal from me." He dropped the act entirely then. "You don't deserve this place," he sneered. "You got lucky with that tech job of yours. You don't know the first thing about property management or renovation. I'm doing you a favor. By destroying my house, by planning to sue me, by making sure this property is in capable hands," he shouted. "Look at you, you can barely change a light bulb. You need me." I pulled out my phone, showed him the pictures I'd taken that morning. "Need you to do what?" "Destroy my kitchen. Remove support beams. None of your renovations are up to code. None of them have permits." His face paled slightly. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Actually, I do, because unlike you, I did my research. I hired a real contractor to inspect your work. Would you like to know what he found?" James took a step forward, trying to intimidate me with his size like he had when we were kids. "You ungrateful little. Every single thing you've done needs to be redone." I cut him off. "The wiring you installed is a fire hazard. The plumbing isn't to code. The wall you removed last month, it was load-bearing, just like I said. The whole second floor could collapse." "You're exaggerating," he scoffed, but I could see the uncertainty in his eyes. "The contractor's report has been sent to my insurance company, the city building inspector, and my lawyer." I pulled out an envelope. "Along with copies of your hidden documents." He lunged for the envelope, but I stepped back. "Don't bother. These are just copies. The originals are safe." "You can't prove anything," he snarled. "I've lived here for 6 months. I have rights." "As what? A tenant?" Because I have no record of you paying rent. A contractor. Where's your license? Your insurance? Your permits? Each question hit him like a physical blow. I could see his mind racing, trying to find a way to twist this to his advantage, but he always did. Mom and Dad won't let you do this to me, he finally said, playing his favorite card. I laughed. Mom and Dad don't own this house. I do, and you have exactly 1 hour to get your things and leave. Or what? Or the police will remove you. They're already on their way. His face turned red. You called the cops on your own brother? No, I corrected him. I called the cops on an unlicensed contractor who's been intentionally damaging my property while plotting to steal it through fraudulent legal claims. The sound of sirens in the distance made him flinch. 1 hour, James, and if you take anything that isn't yours, I'll press charges. He stormed upstairs, swearing and threatening. I heard things being thrown, doors slamming. I didn't care. Everything valuable was already secured in my safe. While he packed, I called our parents. They reacted exactly as I expected, with denial and demands that I work things out with my brother. He's family, Mom pleaded. Family helps family. Really? I asked, because all I see is family trying to steal from family. He's just trying to help you, Dad argued. You know you're not good with practical things. Is that what he told you? Did he mention the illegal renovations? The lawsuit he was planning? Their silence told me everything. They knew. They probably even encouraged him. The police arrived just as James was dragging his bags downstairs. 2 officers took statements while James tried to argue his case, claiming he had tenant rights, that I'd promised him partial ownership. Do you have any documentation of these agreements? One officer asked. James's face darkened. No, but. Then you're trespassing. Leave now, or we'll remove you. I watched from my ruined kitchen as my brother was escorted out of my house. He turned back at the door, his face twisted with rage. You'll regret this, he spat. You're nothing without me. You'll fail and I'll be there to watch. Better to fail on my own than succeed with a snake, I replied, closing the door on his fury. Once they were gone, I walked through my house, really seeing the damage for the first time. The contractor's estimate hadn't been exaggerated. It would take months and nearly $200,000 to fix everything James had destroyed. But as I stood in my demolished kitchen, I felt lighter than I had in months. The house was damaged, yes, but it was mine. Every broken tile and cracked counter was a reminder that I finally stood up to my brother's bullying. My phone buzzed continuously, messages from family members calling me cruel, heartless, a bad brother. I blocked them all. Then I called the contractor who'd inspected the house. How soon can you start the repairs? I asked. We can begin tomorrow, he replied. But it won't be cheap. I know, but this time, it'll be done right. I hung up and looked around my kitchen one last time. Tomorrow the real renovation would begin, and not just of the house, but of my life, my relationships, my self-respect. James had called me stupid, but he was the one who'd underestimated me. He thought I was the same pushover little brother he could bully and manipulate. He was about to learn just how wrong he was. Because while he was busy plotting to steal my house, I've been quietly documenting everything. Every illegal renovation, every violation of building codes, every threat and insult. And tomorrow, after the contractors started their work, my lawyer would be filing charges. James wanted to play games with property law. Fine. Let's see how he handles fraud charges and civil lawsuits. He thought I was too stupid to manage this property. Now he was about to manage something else entirely, his own legal defense. And this time, Big Brother wasn't going to win. The aftermath of James's eviction was like watching a controlled demolition. Messy, loud, and exactly as planned. Within 24 hours, he'd launched his counterattack. First came the social media barrage, posts about family betrayal and how I'd stolen his investment. He shared carefully edited photos of the renovations, positioning himself as the hard-working brother who'd poured his heart and money into our project. What he didn't expect was my response. I simply posted the contractor's video assessment showing every code violation, every hazardous improvement, complete with estimated repair costs. The before and after pictures were particularly damning, especially the load-bearing wall he'd removed that now had the second floor sagging dangerously. His professional reputation, what little he had, crumbled overnight. Former clients started commenting with their own horror stories. One even tagged the state licensing board, questioning how he'd done work without proper permits. Then came the family intervention. Mom and Dad showed up unannounced one morning just as the real contractors were starting work. "This is ridiculous," Dad thundered, watching as workers carefully documented the damage. "Your brother put his heart into this house." I led them through the disaster zones, pointing out each violation. "See this wiring? It could have started a fire. That plumbing? Raw sewage could have backed up into the house." He wasn't putting his heart into it, Dad. He was setting me up for failure. Mom tried a different approach. "He's sleeping on someone's couch," she pleaded. "He's lost clients because of your posts." "He's lost clients because he's dangerous and unqualified," I corrected. "And he's homeless because he chose to be. He has an apartment. He just stopped paying rent when he moved in here to execute his little scheme." "What scheme?" Dad demanded. "He was helping you." I handed them copies of the documents I've found. They read in silence, their faces dropping as they realized the extent of James's plan. This must be a misunderstanding," Mom whispered. "The only misunderstanding," I said quietly, "is that you both still think he's the golden child who can do no wrong." They left shortly after, clutching the documents and looking shaken. I knew they'd still take his side eventually. They always did, but at least now they knew the truth. James's next move was predictable. He tried to file a mechanic's lien on the property, claiming I owed him for labor and materials. My lawyer shut that down quickly, producing receipts showing I'd paid for all materials and pointing out that unlicensed contractors can't file liens. "Your brother's digging himself deeper," my lawyer warned. "The licensing board is investigating him now. He should stop while he's ahead." But James never knew when to stop. He started driving by the house at night, taking photos of the renovation work, looking for violations he could report. The security cameras I'd installed caught him trying to sneak onto the property one night, presumably to sabotage the repairs. The restraining order was delivered the next day. He violated it within hours, showing up at my workplace to make a scene. "You think you're so smart," he shouted as security let him out. "You've ruined my life." "No," I called after him. "You ruined your own life. I just stopped letting you ruin mine." That evening, I received an unexpected call from our sister Laura, who'd been staying out of the drama. "I saw the documents Mom and Dad had," she said quietly. "I always knew James was a bully, but this was calculated." "You believe me, I hadn't expected that." "James tried the same thing with my condo last year," she admitted. "Offered to help with renovations, then started talking about partnership agreements. I said no, so he called me ungrateful and stopped speaking to me." We talked for hours, sharing stories of James's manipulations over the years. It was healing, realizing I wasn't alone, that someone else in the family saw through his act. The contractors made steady progress over the next few weeks. Each repair revealed new problems James had created, but also showed me how beautiful the house could be when work was done properly. Then came the letter from James's lawyer, demanding mediation. He was claiming we had a verbal partnership agreement, that his work constituted sweat equity in the property. My lawyer's response was brief: a countersuit for damages backed by the contractor's reports, building inspector citations, and James's own documented plans to defraud me. "He'll back down," my lawyer assured me. "He has no case, and he knows it." But James didn't back down. Instead, he doubled down, filing complaints with every regulatory body he could think of, trying to halt the renovations. Each complaint was investigated and dismissed, but it slowed the work and cost me money, which I realized was exactly his goal. Death by 1,000 paper cuts. So I changed tactics. I stopped defending and started attacking. First, I reported his unlicensed contracting work to the state board, providing documentation of every job he'd done illegally. Then I contacted his former clients, helping them file complaints about his substandard work. "You're playing hardball," Laura observed when I told her my plan. "No," I replied. "I'm finally playing his game. I'm just better at it." The final blow came when one of his former clients sued him for repairs to their property. They used my case as evidence of his pattern of negligence. James couldn't afford a lawyer, couldn't fight back, and ended up with a judgment against him that would take years to pay off. Mom called me, crying, begging me to help him. "He's your brother," she sobbed. "He's about to lose everything." No, Mom. He lost everything when he decided to steal from me instead of actually helping me. This is just the bill coming due. As I hung up, I looked around my newly renovated kitchen. The proper contractors had done in weeks what James had failed to do in months. Everything was beautiful, functional, and most importantly, safe. The house I dreamed of was finally becoming reality. And somewhere out there, James was learning that actions have consequences, that bullying doesn't work when your target stops being afraid, and that sometimes the stupid little brother turns out to be smarter than you thought. He wanted to manage my property. Instead, he was managing the consequences of his own actions. And I was finally managing to live without his shadow over me. 3 months after James's eviction, I hosted a housewarming party. The renovations were complete, turning my Victorian dream home into a showcase of what proper craftsmanship looks like. Every room stood as a testament to doing things right, not doing things James's way. Laura came early to help set up, bringing an expensive bottle of wine and news about our brother. He's working as a day laborer now, she said, arranging appetizers. Can't get contracting jobs anymore after the licensing board investigation. I nodded, feeling a complex mix of satisfaction and residual guilt. And Mom and Dad? Still enabling him. They're letting him live in their basement, telling everyone you destroy his business out of jealousy. The doorbell rang, my new neighbors arriving for the party. As I welcomed them, I caught snippets of their whispered conversation about that awful contractor they'd heard about. James' reputation had become a cautionary tale in the neighborhood. The party was in full swing when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Nice party. Shame if something happened to your precious house. I showed Laura the message. She paled. That's got to be James. You should call the police. Already forwarding it to them, I replied. Violation of the restraining order. Minutes later, security cameras caught James lurking near my property. The police were there within 5 minutes. I'd become a priority after his previous violations. This time, they didn't just escort him away. They arrested him. Your brother's going to spend the night in jail, the officer informed me. You want to press charges. I thought about Mom's tears, Dad's anger, the family drama that would explode. Then I thought about that text message about James's endless attempts to destroy what I built. Yes, I said firmly, I want to press charges. The party continued, but now there was an undercurrent of excitement. Nothing like an arrest to get people talking. I heard guests sharing their own renovation horror stories, comparing notes about contractors who tried to scam them. You did the right thing, Laura assured me later as we cleaned up. James needs to learn he can't intimidate people anymore. The next morning, Mom called. Her voice was different, not pleading this time, but cold with fury. They're keeping him for 48 hours, she spat. Your own brother in jail. Are you happy now? Actually, yes, I replied calmly. For the first time in years, I'm very happy. My house is beautiful, my investments are growing, and I don't have to worry about someone trying to steal everything I've worked for. He would never. I have proof he would. I have proof he tried. And now I have proof he's still trying to hurt me. When are you going to stop defending him and see who he really is? She hung up. Minutes later, Dad called. Your mother's crying again, he began. Then maybe she should stop enabling the son who keeps breaking the law and start supporting the one who follows it. Silence. Then, surprisingly, a heavy sigh. You know, the contractor who fixed your house? He looked at our roof last week, said every repair James ever did needs to be redone. Said we're lucky the house hasn't caught fire. And maybe we've been wrong about some things. It wasn't an apology, but for my father, it was seismic. For the first time, he was admitting James wasn't the expert he claimed to be. Later that week, I received notice that James was being charged with stalking, violation of a restraining order, and making threats. His lawyer reached out, suggesting a deal. James would plead guilty to reduced charges if I agreed not to pursue further civil action. I consulted my lawyer, then made a counteroffer. James would plead guilty, agree to psychiatric evaluation and treatment, and sign a legally binding agreement never to contact me again. In return, I wouldn't sue him for the hundreds of thousands in damage he'd done to my house. You're being generous, my lawyer observed. No, I corrected. I'm being smart. I don't want his money. I want him out of my life. James accepted the deal. I heard through Laura that he broke down during his psychiatric evaluation, finally admitting to years of resentment over my success, his failures, and his inability to accept that his stupid little brother had surpassed him. The therapist says he's got narcissistic tendencies, Laura reported. Mom and Dad are having trouble accepting the diagnosis. They'll have to accept it without me, I replied. I'm done managing their feelings about James. My house was finally, truly mine, not just legally, but emotionally. Every room had been reclaimed from James's destruction, every space transformed into something beautiful and safe. The property value had increased significantly after the proper renovations. But that wasn't what mattered. What mattered was that I'd stood my ground, protected what was mine, and refused to let family ties become chains. James had called me too stupid to manage this property. Now he was managing a criminal record, mandatory therapy, and the ruins of his reputation. Sometimes the best revenge is simply letting someone face the consequences of their own actions. And me? I was managing just fine. 1 year later, I sat in my study, reviewing the property's latest appraisal. The value had increased by 40% since the proper renovations, but the real value was in the peace I'd found. A letter had arrived that morning, James's final communication required by his therapy program. He wrote about his diagnosis, his treatment, his recognition of his toxic behavior. The words "I'm sorry" appeared multiple times, but they felt hollow, like lines from a script. I filed the letter away without responding. Some bridges aren't meant to be rebuilt. Mom and Dad had gone through their own transformation. After discovering more of James' dangerous work in their house, they finally hired licensed contractors to fix everything. The bills forced them to face reality. Their golden child had been putting their lives at risk for years. Your brother meant well, Mom still said occasionally, but the blind defense was gone from her voice. Dad had changed more dramatically. He started calling me for advice about investments, home maintenance, even life decisions. It was a subtle admission that maybe the stupid son had known what he was doing all along. Laura visited often, bringing her kids to play in my now beautiful backyard. We'd grown closer, bonded by our shared experience of James's manipulation and our decision to break free. "Have you heard?" she asked during one visit. "James is working as a handyman at a small motel. No more pretending to be a contractor." I nodded, unsurprised. The licensing board's investigation had effectively ended his construction career. His criminal record made it hard to find better work. He was managing, but barely. Sometimes late at night, I walked through my house, touching the walls he'd once threatened to tear down. Each room told a story now, not of destruction, but of resurrection, of standing up to bullies even when they share your blood, of choosing self-respect over family obligation. The security cameras remained, but they rarely caught James driving by anymore. The restraining order, therapy, and consequences had finally taught him the lesson I'd failed to teach for years. I wasn't his to control or manipulate. My success wasn't luck or stupidity. It was the result of hard work, careful planning, and the courage to protect what I built. Every time I turned the key in my front door, I remember his words. "You're too stupid to manage this." Now I manage not just the property, but my life, my boundaries, my relationships. I've learned that sometimes the most valuable renovation isn't in the building, it's in yourself. The family dynamics had shifted permanently. Holiday gatherings were smaller now, quieter without James's booming voice and constant criticism. Some relatives still thought I was cruel for pressing charges, for refusing to help my brother. But I'd learned that real cruelty often hides behind the words family and help. My house stood as a testament to this truth. Every properly installed fixture, every correctly wired outlet, every safely reinforced wall reminded me that doing things right matters more than doing things to please others. James had tried to tear down my house and my confidence. Instead, he forced me to build something stronger, not just a home, but a fortress of self-worth. And as I sat in my study, watching the sunset through windows he once threatened to destroy, I realized something important. Sometimes the best way to manage property is knowing what to protect it from, even if that means protecting it from family.